your recent book, The Warrior Heart Practice, what exactly, that's an actual practice. So what exactly is that?
Yeah, it's a practice that I created when I was talking to a friend of mine who was in a lot of suffering and kept telling the same story over and over again. And I realized how much suffering we create for ourselves with the stories we tell ourselves that aren't true. So the Warrior Heart Practice is a way to help people get out of story and into the truth. And there's 4 chambers. So the heart has 4 chambers. All of them are really important. And the same is true with the Warrior Heart Practice. So the first chamber is the feeling chamber. The second chamber, the story chamber. The third is the truth chamber, and the fourth is the intent chamber. And then you go back through the process. So you get to spend time with each of these different parts of ourselves, with what am I feeling? What story am I telling myself? What's actually true here? What is my intent? And then you go back through the process to really unwind the story so that we can be more empowered in how we're navigating and telling our own stories.
Is that the same as the 4 core strategies for coping?
It's different. You can definitely see how the strategies show up. So the 4 core strategies are pleasing, distracting, isolating, and controlling. And so when we get uncomfortable as humans, what we tend to do is go towards a strategy to make us feel safe. So we don't feel safe. I think of it as a template. Like we automatically go to, I'm just going to control everything, or I'm going to please everybody, and that will make me feel safe. If everybody else is happy, then I'm safe. So that's a strategy. And those really weave into our stories. So we can get a story of, I need to please everyone. If, let's say, you were the youngest kid and you felt like you didn't get enough attention, I'm just totally making up a story now, that you then decide as a kid, okay, the only way I'm going to get attention is if I do better than everyone else in my family and I shine really brightly and I please everybody, make sure everybody else is happy. And then if you have a situation in your life where, let's say, your boss is not happy with you around a piece of, report you did, or you turned something in late. Instead of it just being the truth, I turned the report in late. We make up these huge stories of like, I'm going to get fired. I'm a terrible person. I've never been enough. I can never please anybody. And that's how we create the amount of suffering that we do. So that's really what the practice is about, is helping us to get clear about, one, where we're avoiding feelings. Because a lot of times what the strategies are also doing is they're a way to manage our feelings so we don't have to feel them.
Yeah.
So instead of feeling upset, I'm just going to try and please you. And instead of feeling the grief, I'm going to distract myself. So there's a lot of ways that we exit our feelings. So that's why the first chamber in the heart practice is, what are you feeling? We start there, but learning how to separate the feelings from the story, which is a lot of us really don't know how to do, is to separate those two.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I feel like we tend to not even think, what am I feeling in this moment? Like we don't even ask ourselves. We just immediately
react,
go to those 4 strategies. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It feels like we have so much in our culture that asks us to look at maybe where we need to eat differently or flex our muscles differently or work out in other ways and practices that allow us to grow physically a lot of the time, but we just shy away from where we can clean our bodies out, our minds out, our spirits out from all this other toxic stuff that is not true. And these stories, like I think what you're talking about here, is that toxic story that is no longer serving you. May have served you for a time, right? But we haven't done the work. We haven't, flexed the inner muscle to remove those things.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like having a room where you never clear anything out.
Right.
So it just gets more and more cluttered and crowded, and the emotions and the story start mixing together, and most of us live basically bouncing back and forth between the feeling and the story. So we have a little feeling and then we distract ourselves and then we tell ourselves a story about it, and then the story gets bigger and we blame somebody else or we feel ashamed of our past. And then the story makes us feel the feelings more. And so then we have to numb ourselves or manage the feelings. So it gets really messy. Yeah. So I do feel like this is like, spiritual kung fu to clean up the story.
Yeah.
So that usually telling the same story over and over.
Over and over again. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And as we clean it up, then we have the space to connect to our intuition and connect to our love and connect to our creativity.
Yeah, that's interesting. My sister today texted me, was like, I've cleaned about 1/3 of my house out, like she's going through and kind of feng shuiing her whole house. I'm like, that is awesome. They say that the way that the inside of your house looks is a direct reflection on the way the inside of your brain looks. So that'll be really freeing. It'll free up some space for her to grow.
Everywhere but my closet. Don't look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Look everywhere else.
Yeah.
I need
And
some
so-
cleaning myself though. So I
Yeah.
was wondering if you would be able to maybe briefly lead me through this practice, releasing or looking at least truthfully a story that I've been telling myself.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be so happy to do that.
Cool. Okay. So Jade and I, even my husband, Chris, and I thought about some ideas that were things that I often seem like come up as my story whenever I get triggered. Okay, this is the thing that always roots back. And something that has been one of those that just seems to stick around is my father not choosing me, I think is the essential sentence I would use for that. So how do we want to start on this, HeatherAsh?
Great. So the story is father not choosing. So where we want to start is in a feeling chamber. So close your eyes for a minute so you can go inside and say that statement to yourself. My father didn't choose me.
My father didn't choose me.
And then take a breath and ask yourself, what do I feel about that? So let yourself drop in and really go to the feelings. Like when you were feeling that story the most intensely, what were you feeling in your body? So go towards the sensations.
Definitely sadness and anger.
Mm-hmm. And where's the sadness? Where is it in your body?
Low belly.
Okay, good. So just take a moment, breathe into the low belly where that sadness is. Just let yourself be with it. And you don't need to fix it or change it or understand it. Just say hello to the sadness. Good. And what do you notice about the sadness? How does it feel in your belly?
Feels like warmth and kind of rageful, tense.
And go towards the rage now. So you said you also felt anger. So
Mm-hmm.
noticing where the rage is in your body. So maybe in your belly as well, maybe in other places. So just scan your body and then settle into where's the rage, where's the anger?
My throat, my jaw, maybe my low back, and even like my temples.
Okay. So all those places, temples, jaw, throat, low back, breathing into the rage. And again, without a story, just feeling the rage. So just let yourself really go into the rage for a moment to explore what it feels like without justifying it or needing to understand it. And if you notice a story coming up around it or pictures, just say, wait, we'll be there in a moment. Just come back to your body right now. What's my body feeling in this moment?
Anxiety.
Yeah. Where's the anxiety?
In my breathing.
Okay, so you can feel it in your breathing. So noticing anxiety, saying hello to anxiety, breathing into it. You're not trying to make it go away, just simply being with it for now. All right, and scanning your body again, is there any other emotion that's present?
I want to say worry. It's more tension.
So you have anxiety, worry, and then tension. So take a moment to breathe into that sense of worry and that tension in the body. Good. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. We're going to step into the story now.
Okay.
So letting the emotions be, and then imagine that you're stepping now into another space. And that space is the story that you've told yourself. So what's the story that you've told yourself?
That I wasn't enough or good enough or worthy of my father choosing me over my stepmom.
Okay. So that you weren't worthy enough, that you weren't enough for your father to choose you over your stepmom. Okay. And is there any other place the story's gotten tangled?
It tangles. I think the worry portion comes from a sense of worrying to be abandoned, but also a worry of needing to care for him because he wasn't able to protect me against her and that situation. And so I worried for his own safety. And I think as the oldest child too, it became an even stronger story.
Mm-hmm.
The worry that I couldn't protect my little sister, who was, just in a similar situation, obviously, with me. And then I think the other piece of the story is around grew into shame of not being chosen or not being wanted enough or not being desired comes to mind. It turned into not just shame of feeling not worthy for so many different things. Like it could be worthiness for me around, am I smart enough? Worthiness for me around, am I sexually attractive enough to my partners? I mean, I think it all kind of roots back to the same story.
Beautiful. Thank you. So then the tangle is the initial, he didn't choose me, he chose her. And then what then also got woven in of, I'm not worthy enough, I'm not enough, but also I have to protect him. And I have to protect my little sister against her because he didn't choose me. So there's almost like there's danger because he didn't choose me.
For sure.
And then the fear of the abandonment, which you said then pulls into the present time, abandonment and not enoughness.
Yeah.
And can see how that ties back to the worry then. All right. So just honoring the story. We just take a moment to acknowledge that story and all the things that have gotten tied to it from your childhood forward to adulthood, and just to take a moment to really feel the tangle. Now, I sometimes think of the story chamber as like, for me, my story chamber is like all these library books of all the rules, and it's really messy, but like there's all these laws. So just to take a second to notice what your story chamber feels like with that particular story.
It's messy and cluttered, not feng shuied. Like we were
So
a little overwhelming.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so acknowledging. And then the next chamber, we have to take a really big step, is how I think of it, is that you're stepping out of the story and that you're willing to step into what is true. And so imagine that you're stepping into now the truth chamber, and the truth chamber is very simple. Truth is one sentence. And I always think about it, one sentence period. One sentence period. So what's true in the situation? What do you know is true?
He was doing the best he could from where he was.
Yeah, so that's true. He was doing the best he could from where he was, period. So just sit with that for a moment. And what's also true?
He loved me.
Yeah, so just be with that. He loved you, period. So if you just breathe into that for a moment, let that settle in. Good. And what else is true? What else can you see is true?
He wanted to do better.
Yeah, he wanted to do better. Yeah, period. So without the story, just he wanted to do better. Good. And what else? Anything else that you can sense, that you can feel is also true?
He loved my sister too.
Loved my sister too.
He didn't know how to fix it.
Yeah. He didn't know how to fix it, period. Okay, so let's hold with that for a moment. So those are beautiful truths. He loved you. He loved your sister. He didn't know how to fix it. He was doing his best, period. So hold with that, just that spaciousness. And you may feel yourself getting pulled back into the story. And anytime we say he loved me, but he should have done another, we're back in story. So you just bring yourself back to truth. He loved me, period. Feel that in your body. You may have to keep bringing yourself back into the truth. And we're going to step now into the fourth chamber, which is the intent. And that's what is your intent in regards to this situation that's been causing you so much pain? What do you want for yourself? What's your word? And the intent is one word that's going to be your focus.
To feel safe.
Yeah.
Safety.
Safety. All right. So bring safety into your body right now. What does safety feel like? So breathe into safety. That's your intent. That's going to be your North Star. Safety.
It feels like I'm strong and independent and capable.
Yeah. Beautiful. So safety, strong, independent, capable. Good.
Able to protect myself and others.
Yeah, able to protect yourself and others. So imagine now that intent of safety is a being. It's an energetic, and you're going to hold its hand. So imagine that you're holding safety's hand, and you're going to step back now into the truth chamber and hold hand with your other hand with those truths that you came up with. So the truth, he did his best. He loved me. He loved my sister. He didn't know how to fix it. So holding your intent for safety and those truths. And what other truths? Is there any other truths that you can see? Now that you have your intent for safety, imagine that you can look around the truth chamber and see, is there any other truth there?
You didn't want this to be the way it happened.
Yeah. He didn't want it to be the way it happened. Yeah. And there's one more truth that I think is really important, which is that you did your best. And can you feel that as a truth? Yeah, you did your best. And so imagine now that you can take the truth and your intent, you're going to walk back into the story chamber. So back into that messy room. And now look at it through the eyes of intent and through the eyes of truth. So your intent for safety and those truths, what do you see now? How can you look at the story differently? What can you release and what can you rewrite or perceive in a different way?
Safe now.
Yeah. So as an adult, you are safe now. Yeah.
There's no danger.
Yeah. There's no danger.
and we're all okay, really.
So you can bring your adult self now into the story chamber, and also then look at where is there a part of you that's still holding that story, the child part of you that's still holding the story, that needs an adult to help her feel safe. So you're now the adult going back to find that little girl that didn't feel safe, and to find out, what does she need to feel safe? What does she need now to feel safe?
I think it's relationships that support the new story, to release the attachments to things and people that she's built into something related to that story, the old story.
Yeah.
To trust people.
So to help her unweave the story from where she's threaded it into the present, where she's pulled people in, or where she's perceiving through that story. So to ascertain and to start clearing. Yeah. From that place of, we're safe now, and that you can clean what's connected to the old that isn't serving you as the adult, and hold her, help her turn towards you rather than towards the outside for safety. Or pull in people, like you said, or like really call the people towards you that are writing a new story and that can support you in the new story. Yeah, beautiful. And then closing, so go to the feeling chamber. I know you're there, you're feeling, and just let yourself really acknowledge what the feeling is now. So there isn't a right or a wrong at all. It's just, what are you feeling now? Going through the chambers and coming back out.
Hopeful.
Beautiful, hopeful.
Capable, not so in danger, not so endangered.
Yeah, good. Yeah. So whenever you have worry, anxiety, like those initial feelings that you said, not enoughness, to immediately go to, how do I feel safe? How do I help myself feel safe here? So that's going to be your intent going forward, to unweave it, because now you go into your life and you now have some tools.
Yeah.
You have the truth and you have the intent. Your intent is gold, because that's going to be everything. How do I bring safety here? How do I feel safe? And a lot of that's going to be reminding yourself, I am safe. And so there's a part of me that doesn't feel safe. What does she need?
Right.
Yeah. How does that feel?
Really good. Really difference in just a few minutes. But yeah, it feels like it's just another tool in my tool belt to work through these things and release them, because we know when things aren't serving us. It's just knowing isn't enough always.
Yeah. And so often the knowing comes when the feeling and the stories tangle together. And so to bring in the truth and the intent changes everything.
Yeah. To sort through the emotion from the truth.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much for being
Thank
so
you.
vulnerable. Yeah.
Thank you. I got to grab a tissue now. Hold up. Thanks, HeatherAsh. That was amazing.
I like that you said the truth is simple, that there's like a knowing, even if it's uncomfortable. Yeah. I think that's true too, is a lot of times when it's a story, it's overcomplicated.
Yeah, always. And so often what we do is we go into the truth chamber, we write a better story and we call it the truth, but it's just a better story. Right. And so to really start to ask ourselves, what is actually true here? What do I know is true? And there's, feeling sad is true in the moment. So it might be, I feel really sad right now. And we also understand that's subjective. It's going to change. And there's also truths that, like, they seem true, but they're actually not true.
Right.
All the time. Like, the sky is blue. Well, unless it's cloudy.
Right.
Or unless there's a volcano erupting somewhere and then it's gray. And water is fluid unless it's freezing and it's ice. So we get to, it's for me, that's been an incredible part, is to really fall in love with the truth and get curious about it. And also understand the story's compelling, to have so much compassion for our stories really as humans. Yeah, just so much love for ourselves as we untangle the story.
For me, it seems that it's like the difference between the phrase fake it till you make it, which is useful to some degree. I understand that sometimes can get you out of a funk or something, or at least, get you to maintain what you need to do for the time being. But I think seeking the pain in the truth sometimes is also necessary.
Yeah, it's so valuable. And sometimes when we're doing what I think of as spiritual bypass, which is, I'm supposed to be happy all the time. I'm supposed to look good. I'm supposed to not bring my vulnerabilities here. And if I just keep shoving them down and smiling, it'll get better. And it doesn't, it gets worse.
Right.
And we go into addiction. I mean, we exit our emotions in so many ways. We go into addictions, we go into
Shopping,
numbing out,
anything,
shopping. Yeah, exactly. I mean, anything, cleaning, like that's my favorite exit. Clean my house again.
Yeah.
So, you know, and then I'm like, oh wait, something's up. If I'm like thoroughly clean, and I can feel the difference now of like cleaning because I'm grounding myself versus cleaning because I'm avoiding something.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then I go, all right, sit down, girlfriend.
Yeah.
What are you feeling? What's actually going on here?
Yeah.
What does
Mine
the
is
difference?
cleaning.
What does the difference feel like for you? Just, can you put words to that? I don't know.
Yeah, I can. Like, I've been traveling. I just got home today. And the cleaning is like this just meditative opening. Like I feel open, I feel soft, I feel present. Versus when I'm avoiding something, I'm like frantically like, this isn't the wrong place. Yeah, there's angst involved in it. And there's this fuzzy energy. Yeah, it's really different. Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's interesting too, because sometimes when I clean, even from the ungrounded place, it's like when I purge the most stuff. And so then it's like later when I realize it, I'm like, well, at least there was something useful came of that because I got rid of all those things.
It's really not a bad vice. That's for sure.
Yeah. I really liked the practice that you led Mercedes through, and we've listened to your podcast where you've led a few others already on it. It's been so powerful. And I seeing at your workshop there were so many open women there of all different ages and walks of life. And you had us pair up and we said our story in different tones. Like one tone was like as if it didn't matter in a way, I guess. And it was so interesting to maintain eye contact with everybody during telling our stories, because it was almost like, even though it was a story that may not be true, we were still like being verified, I guess, or being validated. And then when you had us do the intent and the truth, where we held hands and we walked into it, it was almost like just being validated opened up for that, you know?
Yeah.
So
yeah. I always know where I am in my healing process by who I call, because there's people I call who will reinforce the story with me. Like I'll jump into the story chamber and be like, oh God, that's
so
horrible.
true.
That's the worst thing. And I just know I'm not ready to let the story go.
Yeah.
And so, and there's other times when I call the person that'll say, so how do you feel about that? Or, you know, what's the older story? And I know I'm ready to heal it because of who I've called. So I always tell people, like, if you're calling the girlfriend that's saying, oh my God, that's the worst thing ever, just go in. Like, you're in the story, just be in it, but watch what's the result of being immersed in your story.
Right.
Because as you witness what happens by really living the story, you'll start to realize you don't want to live it anymore.
That's interesting. I feel like Jade and I talk about that once in a while.
Yeah.
The different people, you know, we reach
Bring
out to.
different sides. Yeah.
Yeah. And you can kind of count on certain people for giving you the hard truth, and you can count on certain people for like sitting in it with you for a while because you're not ready to go.
Yes.
But I always think it's interesting. As much as I've even tried maybe to be the person who can just sit with someone in it, I'm working on my empathy level, because I think that's what that takes, is a lot of that. And I'm not saying that that's like the right or wrong way to do it. I just know I'm not an expert in that realm, but I am an expert in being overly analytical and saying right away, okay, well, what are we going to do to fix this thing? And then we got to look at this shit and we're going to dig into it. And it's not going to be fun. It's going to be painful. So if you're not ready for that, you probably shouldn't call me.
And I only call Mercedes pretty much. So I'm always trying to heal, I guess.
You're glutton for punishment, I guess.
Yeah.
That's funny.
So your site also mentions cultivating creativity through sexuality, which really caught my eye. Can you go into that with us?
Yeah, our sexual energy is our creative energy. So people separate out like sexuality and creativity, but the truth is it's the same energy.
Yeah, it's in the same chakra, right?
It's the same chakra. It's our life force energy. Yeah, exactly. Second chakra. And so sometimes people will say, oh, well, you're talking about sexuality. It's just about having sex with someone else. And I'm like, that is like this much of such a much bigger conversation. So when we're in touch with our sexual flow, this isn't about who you're partnering with or how you're choosing to be sexual. It's about your connection to your life force energy, and that you can choose to be physically sexual with somebody else, or you can choose to put it into your writing or into your work or into your raising a baby, like whatever it is. That force is, it's life. There's so much energy, and so many women that I work with, including myself. I mean, I used to so repress my sexual energy and was really struggled with it for many years. And to have done a lot of work with it and to get on the other side of having so much more energy and spaciousness. I'm really dedicated to helping women to untangle that story around sexuality and come back into what's their right relationship with their sexual energy, not where it should be, or not the places that we're repressing it or that we're using it to get something, but that it's for us, that it's our nourishment.
What do you find is the most common stories around sexuality for women? I would assume it's like shame related often.
Yeah, a lot of shame, a lot of I'm not doing it right. I don't know how to do it. So there's kind of two camps. There's that camp, and then there's I'm not interested in it. I don't like it, and I do it just because I have to. So there tends to be, and I'd say then there's the third camp of I'm using it because I don't feel enough, because I'm scared, because I don't want anybody to abandon me. So I'm just going to use my sexuality to keep people connected to me as a way to stay safe. So those tend to be the three top ones. And they all need different perspectives to unwind the story. Because it's not just, I think this is something that I see with women across the board is so often, because we don't talk vulnerably to each other. We don't share like our deepest stories,
right?
That we think that we're broken.
Right.
We think something's wrong with me. And when you really start talking to other women, because this is how part of how I healed my relationship around sexuality with shame, is I started asking women, tell me your experience. What's it like? And then I started talking to the guys that I was dating of like, not like, don't compare me, but like, because I just didn't know if I was normal or not. Like, so it was fascinating to just start asking questions and reading and being really honest with other women.
Yeah, it's very true. Whenever you open up to other people there, I mean, it's like every time, I think it's maybe the circumstance that you're opening up to, you intuitively know that this is going to be a place where the reason you're getting to that conversation or the reason you're getting that thing to come out of your mouth is because it's a place that it's ready for that. And the other person 99% of the time is like, me too, I've just been afraid to say something about it, or they have some other similar thing they're ready to share. You know, don't be forceful maybe with that, but if it just comes, then let it come out.
Yeah. What did you find out about yourself when you did talk to those women and the men that you were dating?
What I found is a couple things. One is that like a lot of women were struggling with the same thing. And for me, it was like when I'd first get into a relationship, I'd be really sexual. And then 3 or 4 or 5 months in, it would totally taper off. And I would totally lose my spark around sex at all. And part of it, I realized later, was because there was so much emotion that I'd been repressing that I couldn't, if I kept being sexual, I couldn't repress it. And so I had to stop being sexual, basically.
I see.
I did a healer, a sexual healer, really specifically around helping me get past the shame and the way I'd capped my energy sexually. And that just made a huge difference. It was hard work, but it was beautiful work.
Wow.
Will you just say again what you said after
you cut out
for just a second, right after you said that you knew if you were going to continue to be sexual that you would no longer be able to suppress this feeling?
Yeah, to suppress the emotions. So I realized I had a lot of emotions from childhood that I just shoved down. But as I started being sexual, if I stayed being sexual, like there was like the relationship coming together, but then once it started stabilizing and the relationship stabilized, if I kept being sexual, all this grief would come up.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. I feel, I mean, I think there's a lot around sexuality I need to work through for myself, but I noticed that I am in this phase of my life more like I have an abundance of sexual energy all the time, you know, well, not all the time, but for a large majority of the time. Also, I track my hormones and I'm very interested in hormones. So I see where it correlates with that as well. But, and then the story, like I told you, whatever might tie back to that root story around my dad and not feeling enough, not feeling worthy. Maybe it hyperbolizes my sexuality or my need to feel validated through my sexuality. And with my husband, he's more calm. He's a little more calm when it comes to that. He's not, you know, he's not overly aggressive when it comes to it or underly, but it only highlights where I'm extra, you know, and then I feel I'm too much. So it's interesting. I flow from being not enough to too much, and I land in the middle.
Yeah. And that's the whole duality thing. Like the moment you say I'm not enough, there's going to be someplace else your judge is going to say, oh, you're too much here.
Yes.
Yeah, that's true. Always. And so do you notice when there's like shame around some of a woman's sexuality, so then her creativity is suppressed as well because it's hand in hand.
Yeah.
Then
A lot of times, yes. Yeah. Then there's a fear of expressing that tends to be there, of expressing in any way. And so those again, that story can very easily get tied together of like, if I have to dampen my sexuality, or if I'm ashamed of my sexuality, then I'm ashamed of my beingness, my creativity, my expression in all realms. Not always, but a lot of times that gets tied together,
That
and
resonates.
it gets freed up as we start freeing the sexual energy.
It's interesting too, then when we go through the stage of being really liberated and we're just like, this is, yep, there we go. When we're in that stage of being liberated and we're just like, this is my body, this is who I am. I'm, I guess you're stepping into, I don't even know what, I know you do maiden, mother, and crone. And I don't even know like if that would be kind of crone-like, where you're kind of just
claiming yourself.
Your wholeness, I guess, but like unashamedly. And just, it's interesting how if that comes across too liberating to people, then they try to bring you back into the shame.
Yeah.
For some, especially in our culture in America, I feel like.
That's really interesting. Today, Jade posted, her birthday's tomorrow. For those of you listening, we're recording this earlier than we're actually releasing it, so don't wish her happy birthday tomorrow. Or go ahead. But she put out a picture today that she's in her birthday suit. She's smiling and sticking out her tongue in her birthday suit, and someone was trying to, shame her. How dare you post something like this online and this type of thing? And it kind of boggles my mind that we are still shaming people for the skin that they're literally born in.
Yeah.
I don't know what, what's the fight there for us? What do we do about that?
Just recognize we're in a much larger dream, and the dream is really shame, blame based. Like there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of blame, and that's the story. And the story is women shouldn't own their bodies. Women should be subservient. This is an old story, but we're still in the process of untangling it. So to recognize that the personal stories that we have, this is men and women, are much larger stories that are generational stories. And we're in a culture that there's a big story around the main religion, whether you're in the religion or not, but Christianity, there's a lot of shame around sexuality.
It's holy to be modest.
Yes.
But we're taught, yeah.
But we're in this weird duality, right? Because you should be a maiden and you should be modest, but you should also be like.
But you're the sexual being,
Right.
So much pressure on us.
So much contradictory. It's just like angle.
It's interesting.
And you can't win.
No, you're damned if you do, and you're damned if you don't.
Yeah, when you really you can't win, then you can change the game. Yeah. But if you're still trying to play all sides of it, because your judge is going to run around going, you're being too modest. You really should be a more liberated woman. And then you start getting more liberated and you start stepping out more. And then your judge, and then also you see it on the outside. Then your judge is like, oh my God, look at you now. Like you're being so slutty. And what you see is you'll start pulling that out of the dream, because the dream's going to reflect both. And you'll start pulling the evidence from the dream.
Even that word slut, it's like, what does that even mean these days? It's not a word that should even be in the dictionary. I mean, so we've got a long way to go, but I'm glad like we're sitting here having this conversation right now, which is proof that we're on the journey there. So it's all good things.
Yeah, and I'm also curious too, like with women feeling liberated or feeling like they can celebrate their bodies or whatever, however we want to title that, how it makes their men feel like they're having to share you almost, or that it almost makes them feel not safe sometimes. Our men that we're in a relationship with. That's interesting too. And I'm curious where that comes from for them, if that's just cultural in the story they've been
probably
taught.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a part of the cultural as well. There's probably a piece of biology in there as well. Like I think it's all mixed up together. And so that's for men and for women, that we get to look at what's biology, what's my training, what I've taken on, and to really keep parsing it through and realize, being human is complicated. Yeah. The stories that we create are complicated. So if we can keep going towards simplicity, but also understand there's complexity. So how do we honor the complexity of being human? It's usually not one thing. It's usually multiple things. And that's why we have to untangle them so that we can get to the truth. Yeah.
Okay. So you also speak on sacred time management. So what does that look like for you? Creating space,
we need this.
Ease, and time for yourself. Yes, this is like foreign to me at this point. So what does that look like for you?
I really discovered this, gosh, probably 15 or 20 years ago when I was running a center. I had a center in Berkeley for many years. And I realized at a certain point that it was really chaotic. Like, I trained a bunch of teachers, like everything that I wanted in my life was happening. I'd written my first book. Teachers were going out around the country teaching, the work. And I was unhappy. Everybody was super stressed out. And I just had to take a step back and go, something's not right here. Yeah. And I went on basically a pilgrimage for a year. My husband at the time and I bought a bus and an RV, and we went around the country. And I really started stepping back and looking at my relationship with time and how busyness, like being effective and busy, the story had gotten tangled with being enough, being good enough. If I was a good girl, I was always busy. I was doing things. I was productive. I was creative. And so I started really unwinding that. And what I learned from running a lot of experiments and really watching myself was that I could, let's say, have a day where I could be super busy during the day and get nothing done. And I could have another day where I would just get really quiet in the morning and I'd ground into myself and I'd get centered and I would wait. And the message would come, do this. And I'd go do it. And things would happen like this.
Wow.
And I've watched that over the years. I still will go through phases for sure where I'm busy, but there's an awareness now of knowing that when you slow down and when you really start listening to spirit, to your own inner guidance, you can make things happen so much more quickly and synchronistically than putting all the effort in. And the old story is the only way you get forward is by efforting.
Right.
There's a big story around
that one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a big one. Yeah. And it ties into the not enoughness that we all have, right? So, well, I'll be enough by doing. Yeah. And to get to that point of being enough by just being. And you're still in action. Like, I get so much stuff done, but it's from a really different place now.
That's beautiful. I mean, just in taking a bath, I think you can feel that as an experiment immediately. You get in the bath, first of all, for me to get myself to take a bath, it takes a work of God. But once I get in this bath, I'm reading my book or I'm just sitting there listening to, calming music or whatever it is. I'm like, this is something that I will not regret on my deathbed head doing ever. This is the time that I want to be spending on this planet while I get to have this human experience, because it's beautiful and it's where I feel the best. It's one of the places I feel the greatest. So why don't I make more time for that? There is not really a good excuse except for the story that I've allowed myself to be completely encompassed by and stuck in.
Yeah. And to step out of that story and to start finding people that are doing work in a different way. So to change a story, I think about it as you're ripening the story, and it's just like you're ripening fruit. So if you're going to ripen fruit, you either put it in the sunshine, put it in a brown bag, or put it next to other fruit. So putting it in the sunshine for me is you tell the story to someone who's like sunshine, that they just witness you. They're not trying to fix you or change you or blame or go into shame. They witness you. And that can completely ripen a story, to tell your story and have someone just receive it. Brown paper bag means stop telling the story. Sometimes to ripen a story, we're telling it all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I ran an experiment with myself to stop saying I'm busy to people.
Yeah.
It's really hard to do.
Yeah. I'm trying to eliminate the word stress. That's one of my big goals next year. This word stressed. I'm stressed. I feel stressed. Not allowed to say it anymore. And it is so hard.
It's so hard. And for me, that's brown paper bag. You stop telling, you go inward and let it ripen. And it's uncomfortable, but that's what helps you ripen. And then the third way is to be around other right people. So if you're wanting to ripen a story around, I never have enough time, I'm too busy, I'm overwhelmed, to be around other people that have figured out how to work without being overwhelmed is critical. Because if you're just surrounded by people that are all overwhelmed, you can't learn anything new.
You're right.
So
I love this magic trick. A very simple 3 steps. Okay. I like it. So sunshine, brown paper bag, and other fruit.
Other fruit.
Love it.
Yes.
Okay, so we have a question from the Magic Mob. Stacy on Instagram asks, what are some tips for raising a warrior goddess daughter?
Number 1 tip, do your own work and model what that means to you. So that's the most important thing, is put your focus on yourself so that you're modeling the qualities you want your daughter to pick up, because she's going to get the energy more than the words. Kids are so energetically perceptive.
They mimic what they see.
They do. So be honest. So doesn't mean don't make a mistake. It means be honest. If you make a mistake, clean it up. same thing you would do with anyone else. And to raise a warrior goddess daughter is to really help her understand her creativity and her strength, and how to pick herself after she makes a mistake, how to pick herself up after she makes a mistake. So, so often we mistakenly, I think, train our daughters that they have to be perfect because we're trying to be perfect.
Yeah.
And if you can really show your vulnerability and your mistakes and then celebrate the mistakes, my God, to raise a kid that celebrates their own mistakes and then keeps going, that's what you want. You want resiliency. Yeah. You're going for resiliency. So think about, what are the qualities of a warrior goddess that are most important to you?
Yeah.
And then talk to her about those. Like, what does resiliency mean? And you can be really creative about describing resiliency or patience or courage and what that looks like.
How would you describe a warrior goddess?
It's a great question.
You wrote the book on it, so I figured you're the person to ask.
So there's the two qualities. Warrior energy is your focus, your clarity, your commitment. It's that 100% I'm in, I'm going. Nothing's getting in my way.
Okay.
And the goddess energy is opening, it's flow, it's fluidity, it's receptivity. It's I'm going there, but how can I have as much pleasure as possible? And who can I bring with me? We need both of these energies. And to understand, I think this is important for raising a warrior goddess daughter as well, is that you want to know who she is. You want to know who you are. So some of us are much more warrior oriented. That's our wiring. That's our essence. More warrior, a little bit of goddess. And some of us are really a lot of goddess and a little bit of warrior. And there's no right or wrong. It's not, if I'm 50% warrior and I'm 50% goddess, I can check it off. It's you're trying to find what's your natural state, and then find what's your daughter's natural state. And you might have, a daughter that's really warrior and you're much more goddess, and you're going to have to navigate how you communicate with her because it's different communication styles. So
that's interesting.
Not trying to make like there's a way to do it. There's finding out what's your expression and what's your balance. And we need both of these energies in our life. We need to be skillful in using them as well.
So essentially it's two archetypes that balance each other out, hopefully. And you being able to identify where you reside a lot of the time helps you find ways to balance it as often as possible.
Yeah, I'd say that's true. And to honor, the balancing is honoring what's true for you. Yeah. What's your balance? What's your right blend of those two energies that feels most authentic? Because we can create shells. So if you're much more goddess, but you're raised in a warrior family, you're going to take on more warrior qualities. And especially women now in corporations, it's very warrior focused.
Yes.
It's starting to change. It's starting to shift. And women are now starting to bring in more of the goddess qualities. But right now we're very warrior focused. And a lot of women have really hurt themselves because they've gone in of like, okay, I've got to do it this way.
Yes.
It's not their nature.
Yes. And I really feel that even with what you were saying earlier, instead of being busy doing, get busy being. And it feels like the warrior she's busy doing, and it's very important because we need to get things done in order to be a progressive people and all these things. But we're so busy doing that we forget to actually be here and now and be present and allow for all the beauty to happen for us, which is what's happening. So I like
celebrate.
I love it.
Yeah.
Thanks for that explanation. That helps me visualize it.
Warrior Goddess Training is one of my all-time favorite books, and one of the ones I think of, every now and then when you're like trying to pull from your toolbox. That's like one that I always am able to pull from. And I think it was 3 years ago that I read it. So I've recommended it to so many women, and I feel like when you read that, you really it feels attainable. It doesn't feel out of reach, which is so amazing. Yeah,
that's good. That's really my mission, is make it practical.
Yeah.
How do we do this in the real specifics? And it's fun to think about warrior energy is if you think about like somebody who's out hunting, whether you're hunting like truffles or whatever, but that what goes into the qualities of warrior for me is incredible patience, incredible stillness, incredible waiting. Like we're in an excess of warrior right now. Excess is the busy and I have to do it, but an actual balanced warrior is like super still. Right. And they wait for the right moment and then they act. So that's coming back into balance.
True, that word. It's so random, but the first time I ever tried to do an ice bath, I failed because it was so shocking, of course, as it is. That's what it does. And so then the next time I got in and I was like literally envisioning myself as this Aztec warrior, like whatever my, history of
Nice.
Aztec warriors, women that I know are back there somewhere. So I'm standing in the ice and I'm like just stilling my breath and trying to just be in this moment, not, in the pain, but in the moment, like I can do this thing. And then I did do it. And it was, it's a silly accomplishment maybe for someone who's done a million ice baths, but if anyone who hasn't, go and try it. You'll see where you have to pull that warrior out.
Totally. It's perfect. It's perfect. And
That's
that
awesome.
Celebration, like my friend Mary and I yesterday, and two other, Serena and Lynn, we just walked from the Basilica, from the pyramids in Teotihuacan. I just got back. So we were in Mexico. We walked 25 miles day before yesterday.
Wow.
To the pilgrimage to the Basilica of Guadalupe, because it's her feast day. And, the first 10 miles, we were like, this is awesome. This is so great. We can do this. Mile 18, it starts to get a little rocky. And mile 22, it was brutal. The last 3 miles were so hard. And it was so funny because walking with my friend Mary, we're in so much pain, both of us. And we're laughing our heads off because we're like, listen to us. We're so funny. And we're so dedicated to get there. But it was such a beautiful, like, warrior goddess moment of we're going to do this. But we don't have to suffer to do this. We can still celebrate.
It's funny too. It makes you laugh at yourself because you're like, I can't believe I choose to do this. Like I choose to do this to myself.
But tribe too, having tribe around, especially other women, is so you get there together. It's huge.
Yeah.
I want to bring back, moon cycle caves or something, like where we all go together and just cackle and do what we need to do.
Cackle.
The next moon. All right, HeatherAsh, there are a few short questions we like to ask everyone who comes on the show, which you answered for us last time. So it'll be fun to see what you got for us this time around. If you could hug your younger self right now, what would you say?
First thing that comes to me, you rock, girl.
Yeah. How old was she?
Like 6 or 7.
6. That's
I love that. Yeah. If you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be?
Probably The 4 Agreements.
That's what you said last time.
Yeah.
Staple. Yeah.
Staple. Yeah.
Yes. If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would you say?
You are loved.
Yes. Thank you for that now. And thank you for that when I need to hear it again later. I'll replay it.
Before we let you go, where can people find you online?
Website is HeatherAshAmara.com, and then all the social media. So HeatherAshAmara.com, Instagram, Facebook, all places, Twitter.
Fantastic.
And all of the books are on Audible.
Yes.
They're all amazing.
And I just read, this is the first time I got to read one of my own books. So the warrior practice is in my voice.
That's so cool.
Yay. I love that.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Love that. You have been, as Jade was describing with her, in the last 3 years, using your books and your work as tools to guide her. That's the same for me. The work you've done has been such a guiding light. Just being on our show last time around and the conversation you had with us has been such a guiding light. And people come up to us all the time and say, HeatherAsh really had something that was special to me, and then they usually go and read your works as well. And so you are just being such a light, and I'm so thankful that you come on our show again and shared that with us again. And thank you for existing.
Yeah.
Thank you both so much. It's always such a delight to come on your show and play with you and celebrate. And thank you for all the good work that you're both doing.
Thank you. And thank you for my little mini session today. I probably have mascara all over my face, but I'm so glad for it.
And I know a lot of our listeners love Eric Gotti's show, The Myths That Make Us. HeatherAsh's show, she kind of leads people through. It's kind of a very similar practice. It's different, but it's what she did with Mercedes, but it's on her show, and she's aired a couple episodes so far.
Yeah, you mean similarly because she pulls a story out that you have been holding on to and has been creating your really past, present, and future, or will continue to if you don't.
And they're all very relatable, so they're touching and moving.
It's really beautiful stuff.
Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, Heather. That's powerful stuff. She's got some real medicine in that practice that she's built. I know that for anyone listening, it's of course different when you're experiencing it yourself, but I think you can even just see how those steps, if you do allow yourself to go through those steps, you can pull out some real truth of the stories that you're running, the old background scripts you're running, and do some self-healing. I think I actually heard her on one of her shows say that she has a PDF, I think, on her website where you can just print out the little method and write it all out for yourself. So
and I'm sure that half of our listeners didn't feel chosen by one of their parents. So when you listen to someone else's story, if you're like brought to tears, or if you're moved, a lot of times we think it's empathy, but it's also a lot of times it's because the story resonates with us, and it's touching a part of us that we, need to look at as well.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. If it triggered you or made you feel any certain way, maybe that's somewhere to start looking. But I'm sure, like I said, if you just try her system, whatever comes up is going to be something you need to look at. So just start there.
So what do you have for magic trick today?
Okay, well, if I hadn't had enough crying and today, then maybe this will pull out the rest. My magic trick is something that is very personal to me because, well, we've made a promise on the show to share very vulnerably with our magic mob, especially if it's something that might in any way be helpful to someone else. So I'm going to share it. What it is to write a letter to any ex of yours that you feel may have been done wrong by you. So as an example, I'm going to read the letter that I recently wrote to my ex, whom while we were together, I was not my best self, and he suffered because of that. Okay, so I titled it, "Thank You for Being a Light in My Life." And it reads, "Dear ex so-and-so, whose name will be unnamed, I suppose that since it's been more than 7 years since we parted ways, this letter is way overdue. I hope it finds you somewhere in your life where you're full to the brim. I'm writing to say how dreadfully sorry I am for any hurt I caused you. I want you to know that in any of the ways I might have made you feel you were to blame for any of the strife in our relationship, I was wrong. You are the only person I've ever known to this day who is so solidly in his mind and body that light radiates from you. That light shines sometimes too brightly on the wounds of others, the wounds that they are trying to conceal instead of heal, and that was me. I was, of course, unconscious of my wounds as they'd been with me for the better part of my life, but the ways in which I blamed you for the lack of passion between us, or the places that I'd point out where I wanted you to be more or where I wanted you to be less, in actuality were my own shortcomings. Blaming you for all the things wrong in me was easier than owning my shit and finding a way to heal my wounds. I deeply regret dragging you through my traumas. They weren't your responsibility to muddle through. I want to thank you though for the ways in which you shone your light so brightly that it made me uncomfortable. Because although it took several years for me to see it clearly, your character assured me that people like you do exist, which gave me the hope to be able to find more balance in my life and continue striving toward becoming a better, more whole human. So even though this letter may come to you as an apology, I hope it also holds the message of how grateful I am that you were and still are a part of my life. I hold you dearly in my heart as one of my most important teachers. Thank you for being a shining star on this planet and for helping to light my way. Your presence here matters, and this world is so much better for it. I wish you all of the love, happiness, and peace. Thank you. I'm sorry. I love you. Mercedes."
I love the way you ended it. It's like the Ho'oponopono.
It was interesting when I wrote it. I had put in my, to-do list that I wanted to write it for probably years. And it'd been in the back of my mind that I should do something like that for even earlier than that. But one day I was feeling some sort of way. I think it was probably where my hormones were at, mixed with, something happening in my household that kind of stirred up where I needed to really address my old story, like my old way of being, and blaming others for the way I felt. And so I just picked up my phone and said, you know what? I'm going to write this right now. I feel like this is just like the time it's going to flow out of me. And I wrote it probably within just a few minutes. It just came exactly word for word out of me. And it was, so if you ever are feeling like, you know what, I really need to get that cleared because you feel that you were a bad person at some place, you were someone you'd not be proud of in the past, write the letter. Even if you don't have somewhere to send it, write it, get it out of your body, because I think it really can be healing.
Yeah, I agree. Even if you don't send it, and it just kind of opens your eyes to what the story is, I guess.
Exactly. And I think you can, like, for me, it's like, this is a circumstance where I felt I was being a shitty person, but also you could write a letter that you wish the person that was shitty to you would write to you, or would have ever written to you or said to you, kind of to self-heal, because that's all we have is ourselves at the end of the day. We are the ones who have to be responsible for the way we feel. So if there's a way that you can, adjust that in your brain and help yourself heal from it by self-love like that, writing yourself the letter you needed to have, I think that helps as well.
Yeah.
What's your magic today, Jade?
So mine, I pulled from Heather Ash's new book, The Warrior Heart Practice. And it's a practice to do before you do the four chambers of
she did.
practice that she did with you. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you were going to, pull up her PDF, or if you were going to listen back to the questions she asked Mercedes or the questions on her own show, if you were going to do that for yourself, which we highly recommend, of course, this is a practice in her book that you're invited to do prior. And so she has something called the big soul and the little soul. And like basically the big soul is wisdom and the little soul is fear. So before you move into the four chambers of the warrior heart practice, she asks that you take a few moments to just write in a journal to help you uncover the little soul stories that you're telling yourself in the first place so that you are able to do the warrior heart practice. And she has questions to guide you. And she asks that you just answer without thinking. Like, don't, put too much thought into it. Just see what comes up and see what you learn about both your foundational agreements and the walls that your little soul has created to feel safe. So these are the questions. You can listen back to journal, or you can just see what comes up when you hear them. What sort of experiences do you find happening in your life over and over again? What beliefs or agreements did you learn from your parents? How do you feel about yourself? How do you feel about the world? What things do you judge about yourself the most? How do you judge others? And what beliefs or agreements are limiting you? And I feel like this is kind of like an imago exercise for when, if you were to write these answers down, just what comes up immediately, and then read back over them, you can kind of see how they all kind of go hand in hand and correlate. So yeah.
Like what the first word is that comes up for each one type of thing. Because they're big, broad questions and they feel overwhelming if you think too hard on them.
Yeah. And asking yourself how you judge yourself and then asking yourself how you judge the world.
Right.
It's probably pretty similar, so.
Yeah, those are powerful. I had my eyes closed while you were asking them, and I could see just like as soon as you'd say it, even though my logical mind's like, well, that's a big question. Let me think about that. Let me put all these, things together for it. But I could also hear a word coming up for me for each one that was pretty concise. So I think if you just write that down and see whatever that means, that's a good place to start if anyone felt like that's too big of a question to ask.
Yeah. I love answering questions though that all of a sudden it gives the light bulb and the other like once you see it on paper and you're like, all these answers go together.
Yes. It's a story. It's a story.
That's repeating.
And you're stuck in it. And that's the beauty, is that you can get yourself unstuck. You have the tools, guys.
You can
it's
rewrite
right here.
your own story.
Yes. We love you. We want you to do that. Let's all make it muddle through this shit together. Seek the pain for positive gain. All right, fam. Before we sign off, I want to remind you, we got a little giveaway going on for our Magic Mob. Basically, all you have to do is leave us a rating and review on your podcast app. You can do it right now while you're still listening to the show. We would love you so much for doing that for us. And once you've written your review, you just snapshot it, post it on your Instagram, and tag our Instagram at The Magic Hour, spelled MAJIC, so that we can see it. And we are picking a couple winners each month to get a $100 Amazon gift card. So you can either just post us a review because you love us so much and you just want to send us some love, or you can double down and possibly win an Amazon gift card from us by tagging us in your Instagram post with the review. So we appreciate you so much either way.
All right, Magic Mobbers, thank you so much for tuning in and taking this journey with us. If this episode held some magic for you, please share it with your friends and family. This would mean so much to us. And don't forget to join us on our Instagram page at The Magic Hour and let us know what your favorite episodes have been so far, because we really appreciate the feedback and want to know what's lighting you up.
Or go listen to some of our past episodes in our podcast library now, including HeatherAsh Amara, our guest today's episode with us last time around. Until then, guys,
be a
light.